Hi there, this is Carrie Lynn Gibbs for Diversity TV, and I'm here interviewing Pastor Art Pawlowski of Calgary. And we're here talking about some of the things that are going on in Alberta and Canada with regards to the mandates and just regards to his experience as a Calgarian who has been involved with helping people during this time that's been difficult for everyone. Here at Diversity, we tell the untold stories, and we're here to hear from Pastor Art, or Pastor Artur Pawlowski. So I'm pleased to be talking to you today. How are things in Calgary?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me in. Well, for me, it's very steady. I have been doing this for the past 23 years now, believe it or not. And so for me, it's another day in the office, if you will. I have been dealing for the past 20 years with heartaches and people dying and people being sick and people hooked on drugs, all kinds of addictions, homeless people, poor families with children, people that have lost their jobs, and just overall difficulties, right? So what we are observing right now is what we have been dealing with before plus. So there's a lot more hurting people, a lot more families with children, a lot more people that lost their jobs and their businesses. So that's what we're dealing with.
So
it's a crisis.
The pandemic has really amplified everything. And can you just, for our listeners who don't know you, can you tell us what you do in downtown Calgary? It is in the downtown area mostly, isn't it?
Well, we work all over the place. 3 times a week, we're feeding thousands of homeless people on the streets of Calgary, but we also deliver food to the native reserves. Like, for example, last year, we delivered over $1 million worth of food to 4 different native reserves. Also, we distribute food to the single moms and the poor families, like including the truckers right now that contacted us, and they ask if we can support them with the food or finances or anything else. So I have been doing this, like I said, for over 20 years and full-time as a pastor since 2005. So that would be my 17th year full-time doing this. We are a church and we meet in the building. We teach theology and history, but also we meet on the streets for those that don't want to go or cannot go, or for whatever reasons, they will not come to the church building. And what we are observing right now during the COVID, it kind of amplified the problem that was always here, but also amplified the situation regarding the government, how big of a failure government is.
Who do you serve when you're serving on the street? And do you think that these are people that government officials really want to see out on the street?
Well, no, they don't. And that's the thing. I was told multiple times, believe it or not, by the high-ranking politicians and different people that would come to me from the political offices, that I am an embarrassment to the city of Calgary because I have created those lineups of hurting people that are coming to receive the necessities of life. So those politicians are completely out of touch from the reality of what is happening in downtown. We got 10 cities, we got people roaming the streets. If I don't give them food, obviously the government is not doing their job. So if people like me, the soup kitchens, if we will not provide necessities of life for those people, I'm telling you, they will get what they need this way or that way, and they will whack your head or your grandma's head. They will break into your cars, into your garages, into your homes, but they will get what they need. I mean, that's just a natural way of things. People will try to get it this way or that way. And that was the disagreement I had with the politicians all those years. I said to them, we are needed. They say you're embarrassment. And
so
they started.
When did you first start having trouble with these politicians? Because I mean, I used to, in my previous career, work with urban urban outreach with people on the west end of Edmonton, and helping people who are in similar circumstances as you. And I heard your name a few times, but I can't remember exactly when that was.
My trouble started when we became very, very highly successful. So just give you a little bit of a background. Within 3 months, we took 600 people off the streets. And if you know anything about the street life, you know that majority of those people are hooked on drugs. So if you multiply, on average, a homeless person will take $100 and up worth of drugs. You take 600 people within 3 months, we're talking about millions of dollars that someone somewhere started to lose. If I add to this whole pickle the knowledge that I have and the proof that I have that the drug dealers were selling drugs in a major shelters in the city of Calgary, like drop-in center, believe it or not, where you had 1,000 people as your clients every single day. So someone was not happy that we became very successful. And that's where I started to have police officers and bylaw services coming. I have been doing this 3 years before that, and that was not a big...
This is very much pre-COVID. Like how many years before COVID or before the situation with the pandemic did this experience that you were having with the authorities, or I don't know, these officials start happening?
Yeah, I have been working with the homeless people since 1999.
Okay.
And then on the streets with another group from 2002, 3, 4, and 5. And we had no problems whatsoever until we grew bigger and we became more successful. We had to learn how to deal with this craziness ourselves. And that's where the police and the bylaw showed up. That's where the politicians got involved. And I was told that, behold, there is actually a law that says giving free goods and services is prohibited, that giving printed material, distribution of the printed material is also prohibited. So Bibles, gospel tracts. And I started to receive tickets. Within 10 years, from 2005 to 2015, I received over 300 tickets, dozen arrests, over 100 court cases, some of them as long as 3 weeks, believe it or not. I won that in 2015, and they left me be until they have found a new way to destroy Christianity and freedoms. 2020, when I became the first Canadian to get a COVID ticket, definitely the first clergyman that got a COVID ticket beginning of April.
So I'm interested in knowing, because of the population that you served, how have they suffered during the pandemic because of, and you see serving the poor as very pivotal in Christianity, right? Because I have heard some comments, like you mentioned Christianity, so that's when we're talking about you're serving in the poor downtown or in the city of Calgary. I've heard people say, why would a religious person do this? And I'm like, he's feeding the poor. But I'm curious as to like how they've suffered since the when you even shut down for the 2 weeks, because you did actually comply initially, is what I understand.
Yeah, well, we never shut down the church. Church was always opened, but we made a deal with the city of Calgary that we will see what is going on after I received the initial tickets. I said, fine, let's see if what you're saying is the truth, and I will not come. I will serve the needs of the people at the parking lot of our church. So we never stopped feeding the poor, not for one day, but we moved the location to the parking lot of our church, and we distributed food right there. However, the problem that I witnessed very early is that the shelters were either shut down or the capacity greatly reduced, and those people started to roam the streets, many. And I've heard stories coming to me back and forth, and of course we lost clients. Many people died during that time because suddenly they were cut off of receiving the necessities of life. And let me say something to you that may sound crazy to some, but I think that's how the government officials liked it. They were pleased that people are dying. They were pleased the homeless are disappearing because it's a headache for them. And I was told multiple times, that they don't want to see homeless people downtown. They don't want to see those people walking around. And I was told multiple times that when I feed them, it creates lineups, and it's an embarrassment for the city of Calgary. Therefore, it would be better if they would not be there. So I think many government officials were very happy that people started to die. Number of them did die. And keep it in mind that homelessness, on average, there's 2 homeless people that die every single week on average. If you look at the statistics every year, COVID or no COVID, but COVID added more deaths to the statistics, to the data. So quickly, we saw what was going on. We heard the reports from the homeless population that they're desperate, that they need us to come back. So we did. And of course, for that crime, I received over 40 COVID tickets, and now 4 arrests, 3 court orders, 2 court injunctions, and contempt of court. I mean, wow. It's insane.
Okay, I would like to transition to more to your experience as a newcomer, and as you've been here for many, many years now, but I mean, since probably the 90s, right? Am I right?
95. 1995.
So I'm just kind of wondering about your experience as well, and how it's related to your experience during the pandemic efforts and everything that's been going on. I noticed a few things. I'll just mention them briefly, and then you can comment. What I noticed as somebody who teaches language and culture, I noticed that when they came to your church door, first, how they entered the place of worship, which I know was very disturbing to you because you've made statements about that in the past. But the thing that I was also very alarmed or noteworthy, that I thought was noteworthy, was the fact how they handled the legal document when they handed it to you. And so I wanted to know how you felt about that. And I also would like to know, kind of if the experience that you've been having with the Calgary police has triggered any trauma or memories from, because you're from Poland, right? And you were involved in the Solidarity movement. You have an organization here in Canada called Solidarity Canada?
Solidarity Movement of Canada.
Solidarity Movement of Canada. So I'm kind of interested in that, and I'd like to know if you can give me a comment about it or something, or explain your feelings.
Sure. You know, as you can tell very quickly, I am a Polish immigrant. I was born behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets, and I grew up in a city that had a concentration camp during the Nazi era. So Poland was the epicenter of the Nazi invasion on the whole free world.
Is that Krakow?
No, I live close to Krakow. Like, what people do not know, that Nazi Germany had thousands of concentration camps, actually over 25 or 26,000 of them all over the Nazi empire during the Adolf Hitler era. So, and that's a problem. People don't know history. They think it was just, Auschwitz-Birkenau and Dachau and Buchenwald, and that's it. But there was 26,000, if I remember correctly, over 20,000 for sure, concentration camps. One of them was in a city I was growing up. So as a kid, we would play in the bunkers of the Nazis where, they had stationed their troops guarding the people enslaved in a concentration camp and eventually murdered. So history was very familiar to me. I grew up hearing the stories from the older generations. Of course, my grandparents, and then growing up under the boots of the Soviets, seeing firsthand the atrocity of communism and socialism. While that's very deep, I will never be able to get rid of that from my memory. It was growing up in hell, if you will. We escaped to Greece, and then from Greece to Canada. And the reason we came to Canada was only one. We did not escape for money. We had a very successful business in Greece. We escaped to Canada after a conversation in the Canadian embassy in Athens, when a man said, "Come to Canada. Canada is the freest country on earth, and in Canada, no one will persecute you for your beliefs." And here I am today, over 340 citations, 15 arrests or 16 now, and over 100 court cases. So we came here because we wanted to be free. We hated corruption, bribery. That was a very common practice in Poland and in Greece. We arrived here in Canada as trying our best to start a new life, a life without persecution, without corruption. So knowing all of that stuff, of course, when the authorities start to act just like the corrupted authorities under, socialism, communism, and fascism, that triggered right away in me the memories of what I've seen in, beginning of the 80s when I was growing up, seeing the tanks, the machine guns, the soldiers, the police beating people up and destroying our beloved nation. Just because some people dare to have different political and religious views than the communists, because under communists you're not allowed to really believe in anyone else except the communist socialist leader, just like you have that in China or North Korea or in Russia right now. So fast forward, I stood my ground. I said to the government, I appealed it to the ministers, to the premier's office, to the mayor. No one cared. No one wanted to listen. I pleaded with them that the people are dying on the streets, that I'm needed more than ever. They did not care. Instead, they started to send more and more police officers. And my record, and I don't know if people realize how crazy 2020 was for me, our record was over 100 police officers, anti-terrorists, 20 police on bicycles, 52 police cars, and the chief of police at our church service. So they just try to comprehend the numbers, the sheer numbers of the police force. And excuse me, why? Because we dared to have a Christmas celebration with gifts for the poor, and we were having a caroling at that time. I end up with 15 more COVID tickets for that horrible, in quote, crime, according to the premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney. So
what were your sorry, I don't want, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to ask about your experience when you were arrested and what that was like for you, because I know that as somebody who has worked as a teacher or an educator in Alberta, at least an adult educator, we're very alerted to the fact that we are to be trauma informed in our profession and how we behave. And so I'm curious about your interactions with the police, if you felt like they were trauma informed or if they had any appreciation for where you're coming from. I do notice that a lot of Polish immigrants are very involved with the anti-mandate movement in general, or feel very intruded upon when it comes to these restrictions.
100%. Actually, believe it or not, majority of people that are fighting this craziness are immigrants, immigrants from Romania, Czechoslovakia, Poland, from the nations that have or had those types of infringements on our rights. So we are very alert. We can smell the devil before he shows up, if you will, because we grew up in hell on earth and we don't want the same repetition of history for our children. I mean, we faced crazy childhood and crazy lives. So we don't want the same thing to be given as a heritage to our children. So when they were coming more boldly and with a bigger force, of course, breaking every law in this country, Criminal Code of Canada, section 176, subsection 1, 2, and 3 prohibits anyone from interfering with the clergyman and interfering with gathering for the purpose of worship. That's a criminal offense. You can go to jail for 2 years for doing that. So I knew the law. I knew that what they're doing is illegal. Of course, we have charter rights and freedoms, fundamentally guarantee rights, and also we have a constitution that protects us from those types of tyrannical mandates and restrictions. So I stood strongly against that, and I wanted them to bring me or to provide me with data, a real data. I wanted to see that we are truly in the middle of pandemic, that this is real, is just not the government opportunity to deprive us from our rights. Of course, that was denied and is still denied. To this day, 2 years later, the government refuses to come to court and present to us the real science, the real data,
So
the stats.
so they haven't presented the evidence that the mandates were even necessary.
That's right. That's exactly right.
In fact, I think that I would put a reference in the link if I can find this, but I believe the privacy commissioner said that if they could prove that the mandates worked, then some of the restrictions might be okay. I'm paraphrasing, but they haven't necessarily proven that they work.
No, data actually shows a totally different story. And I said that publicly, and I'm willing to say that publicly again. If we were truly in the middle of the greatest pandemic of all times, and we were truly in the middle of a crisis, I probably would be advocating for some measures myself, because I'm not an ignorant, crazy person that just whatever, we can do whatever we want. No, believe it or not, I am a law-abiding citizen. I do not speed. I do not use drugs. I don't drive while drinking. I actually don't drink at all. I obey the law. I pay taxes. I do everything that a good citizen is required to do. There's certain things that the government needs to do, and those things are good for the rest of us. However, when I look at the data and the statistics from the province of Alberta, I quickly find out that 2020 was the record low if it comes to ICU admissions since 2015. Also, I found out very quickly that 2020 was also a record low since 2018 and 19 if it comes to hospitalizations. Also, if you look at the death stats, we are slowly every year, if you go back 15 years behind, you see that on average 100, 200, 300 people are dying every year more than the previous year. Why? Because we have more people in the province of Alberta. And when you look at the statistic of 2020, and then we will be able to see the statistics from 2021, you will see that the death rate was very similar to the one that we had in the previous years. Also, if you look at our hospitals, we were told that this might overwhelm the system. It could overwhelm the ICUs and the hospitals and stuff like this. So the use of language was very similar to the propaganda we've heard during the Nazi and also during the communists and socialists. So I very quickly started to fight this because, hey, if we are truly in the middle of the greatest tragic pandemic ever, why the politicians are not following their own mandates and rules? I mean, they know, in quote now, of course, because we know they're liars. We have proven that they are liars. But let's say they have the data for whatever reason they want to release. They don't want to release the data to us, but they know that this is the deadliest pandemic ever. Well, if they know that, that's why they're giving us the mandates and restrictions and regulations and the punishments. Why they themselves do not follow their own rules if they know we are truly in the middle of the deadliest pandemic?
I did see some record from Nova Scotia about off the premier's statement or off the page, that there were 78% of the people that are currently admitted for COVID have had at least 2 shots.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, 2 to 3. And so I added the two stats that they had together. So I'll put that link below too if I need
of course.
to. Yeah.
Of course.
You're full of information and experience, and I'm really glad to be able to let you share your story today. And I hope that our viewers will take a listen and hear you out. And thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're very busy to talk with us today.
Yeah, I just want to finish with this. You know, people ask me, why have I called those people Nazis and Gestapo, and why I use this type of language that is very offensive? Well, I did it on purpose. I did it because those people are acting right now like the Gestapo. What is Gestapo? Gestapo was the Nazi police. So they didn't care about human rights. They didn't care about the Constitution. They didn't care about anything except obeying the orders of their Führer. So the German police, the Gestapo, would break every law in the name of the law. Also, the KGB, the communist, the socialist, Gestapo as well, would come, and they would not care about human rights. They would not care about the law and order. And our police force, unfortunately, the AHS, Alberta Health Services, the bylaw services, the peace officers, with the mask bandits, I call them now, the police officers, they had total disregard to the law of the land. And in the name of the law, with their pistols, with their handcuffs and the tasers, they would infringe, they would break our rights in such a lawless way. That's why I started to call them this way. And now the whole world is calling those people the same way I call them. But that was the reasoning. When you act like a Gestapo, when you act like a Nazi, I'll call you a Nazi, because you swore to protect the rights of the people. We pay you. We pay the politicians, we pay the police, we pay the bylaws, and they should work for us and protect our rights. And they didn't, and they still don't.
You have that expectation, I guess, as coming to Canada from where you came from, you know, and you know that that's something that they advertised to you, right? When you came from Greece, you said they invited you to come to Canada and they wanted you to bring your business here. So so it's kind of like, you think it's false advertising?
No, I think at that time, people really wanted to believe in what they were saying. And there's still some people today, believe it or not, after 2 years of this craziness, that still believe that Canada is one of the freest nations on earth. I mean, you can be very delusional and you can truly believe in what you want to believe. But when you go out, when you actually do things, because as long as you're sitting behind your computer screen, as long as you are not doing anything outside, you may have that impression. But when you actually go out and you have interactions with the politicians and the police force, and you quickly realize, oh my God, we have actually no rights anymore, that they can do whatever they want. I just got arrested. A few days ago. Why? I got arrested before for inciting people to come to church, participating in illegal gathering, church, and officiating a church gathering. And lately, I was charged criminally for not wearing a mask, which I have a medical exemption. Also, I was charged criminally for trespassing. Why? Because I went to pick up my mail, a registered mail in Canada Post Office, and I was told I will not be served because I'm not wearing a mask. And I was charged with causing a disturbance, which you can watch the entire video on my YouTube channel, Artur Pawlowski TV, and you will find out that I've done nothing wrong. And yet, for the police and for the politicians, this is perfectly acceptable to lie, to make stuff up, just to charge a man that has become a symbol for the fight for freedom in this country. So this is a pure vendetta from the authorities. They don't like what I say. They don't like my story. They don't like that I am willing to share my story. So that's why they're doing what they're doing. I just want to encourage you to stand up for yourself, to stand up for your rights. Because if all Canadians would rise up and stand up for their rights, this whole craziness would be over a long time ago.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I think that you have expressed yourself very, very well. And I hope everybody will take a listen. You did mention a phrase a little bit earlier that I wanted to kind of highlight for people, and that is the word, when you were commenting on the use of language, because that's something that I notice as a language consultant. I notice use of language, and I think that people should pay attention to how and what people are saying and what actually they're communicating. So thank you so much. I hope you have a nice evening, and I so much appreciate you taking the time to speak to me today.
Thank you very much. God bless you.